Today's conversation is on how to do nothing to shift your identity. How to do nothing to shift your identity. What I mean by this is, consider this for a moment. As you have acknowledged yourself to be beyond beliefs of limitation in mind, thoughts of limitation in mind, as you acknowledge yourself as pure consciousness to exist beyond the thoughts of limitation in mind, beliefs in limitation in mind, you acknowledge that you are not those thoughts of limitation. You cannot be those thoughts of limitation. You can choose to identify with thoughts of limitation, yet you transcend the thoughts of limitation. You also can choose to identify with beliefs of limitation, yet you transcend those beliefs in limitation or beliefs of limitation in mind. And it could be thoughts of limitation with regards to yourself, with regards to people, environment, circumstance, and information. You still, beyond those thoughts, remain perfectly as you are now, beyond those thoughts of limitation. So in other words, if you choose to identify with thoughts of limitation that seem to suggest you are not love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, you are not all that you desire to be, you do not have all that you desire, you identify with a thought of limitation. Now, no shame, no condemnation. What I'm referring to is anytime those thoughts appear in mind, you can do nothing, and that is being as you are, or as we say, having realized true identity, beyond the thought that appeared in mind that seemed to suggest that you are limited, which is clearly not you. That kind of thinking is discussed in the Bible and refers to the conversations of the old man or the former self, who we could say did not know that he transcended the limitations in mind, the thoughts of limitation in mind. So true identity is you now. You exist now perfectly as you are now, or as we've been discussing lately, reality is perfect as it is now. You are perfect as you are now. Everything appears to be in harmony with you. In the Bible, it says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. All these things will be added unto you. What does that mean? It means that you are perfect as you are now, created in the perfect image of the Creator. I spring from the sure foundation that I am fulfilled now. I am whole, I am complete, I am love, I am happiness, I am bliss, existence, consciousness, bliss. If I, the individual, spring from the sure foundation that I am whole, complete bliss now, then I know certainly if there's a thought of limitation in mind, I can no longer identify with it. As that thought of limitation is no longer identified with, it appears to disappear, as in it no longer appears in mind. And whatever belief of limitation those thoughts arise from in mind also dissolve. And as a result, you remain as you are, perfectly as you are. Now, practically speaking, this plays out as you experiencing, let's say, not being swayed by external conditions more so. You appear to be calmer, more at peace. As you are at peace, you acknowledge that you are peace. You experience life, let's say, more unconditionally loving. As you acknowledge, you spring from the sure foundation of love. Thus, who you are is love. So you may notice then that you no longer seek for external proof, validation, or confirmation of a particular belief in mind that suggests that if an appearance, let's say, appears this way, then love. And if it appears this other way, then not love. You acknowledge that is clearly an illusion. Illusion generated by a particular belief of limitation in mind, suggesting that you are not love. And no shame, no condemnation. In the moment, we do nothing to shift our identity. And by that I mean, very specifically, true identity is you as you are now, perfectly as you are now, beyond thoughts of limitation. Thus you are perfect love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment now. Everything that you desire, which we could say are symbols of love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, you are already that which you desire to be. You found it, we could say, in the form of desire. The fact that you exist as completion, as in you exist as love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. So we could say you are not love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment for this reason or that reason. And by that I mean if this reason is met, then you are. And if this reason is not met, then you are not. You are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment for no reason. Now, it plays out, as mentioned, as harmonious conversations, harmonious relationships. I discovered this through a book called Think and Grow Rich back in 2004. In there, he indicated that you could apply auto-suggestions, which is a way of communicating to yourself to, we could say, renew the mind or remind yourself that you are already that which you desire to be, that you already have what you desire. So they point to the fact, whatever words you choose, point to the fact that you have what you desire. You are what you desire to be. You are, let's say, perfect love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, as everything that you desire, love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. You found it within yourself. You acknowledge that the self, you, is whole, complete, as you are now. That is true identity. Now, over the journey, what happened was I also acknowledge that as I know that I am completely fulfilled, I know that I am love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. I acknowledge that I am love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. If thoughts of limitation appeared in mind, suggesting that I am not love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, that I do not have what I desire, that I am not who I desire to be, which are illusory thoughts or thoughts of limitation towards environment, people, circumstance, etc., those were opportunities to acknowledge true identity, embody true identity. It is physically experienced, actually, as an integrative process. As you acknowledge that you are not the thoughts of limitation, what happens is physically and emotionally you transform. You embody the spiritual truth to a higher degree. I trust you notice this. And what it practically plays out as is physically, you appear to be calmer in situations where, let's say, it could be labeled as challenging or chaos. You also notice that your emotions are regulated by, we could say, shifting your identity by doing nothing. Simply in the moment accepting yourself to be beyond limitations, accepting yourself to be into form beyond limitations by acknowledging that the fact that you exist now is love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, everything that you desire to be. Thus, you lack nothing. The self, you, is beyond the limitations in mind, the beliefs in mind, and more specifically, let's explore the mind. The mind is fundamentally fluid. It is only a belief in mind, a dichotomous belief, this versus that belief, that suggests that if a condition is met, then you are fulfilled, or you are love, or you can be happy. And if not, then you cannot be love, you cannot be happy, you cannot be fulfilled. That is an illusion. That, we could say, if thoughts that arise from that particular belief appear in mind, are an opportunity to do nothing, to shift your identity, and more accurately put, acknowledge your true identity beyond the false identity construct in mind that is made up of beliefs, which can include that belief, for example, of limitation, or you could simply say beliefs of limitation in mind. As you acknowledge that you transcend those beliefs in mind in the moment, simple acknowledgement in the moment, those thoughts of limitation appear to disappear. Emotions are regulated, and your body appears to flow. At that particular point, you have integrated that spiritual truth. So as mentioned, I started this journey with auto-suggestions, and then over the course, if these thoughts of limitation appeared in mind, I did not identify with them. They appeared to disappear. I let them be. I didn't try to fight the thought. I allowed them to be released. And then what happened was further embodiment, we could say, of true identity. You, practically speaking, experience life authentically. This has physical, concrete benefits, what we're talking about here. And, for example, in entrepreneurship, I noticed that I was doing the things that I genuinely desired to do over the course with less and less resistance. I noticed that, for example, over the course of this channel, it was easy for me. It became easier and easier and easier for me to talk about what I truly desired to talk about, as there were less and less thoughts of limitation suggesting in mind that I should not talk about what I truly desire to talk about. And as I no longer identified with those thoughts, what appeared then is the embodiment of true identity. All by doing nothing, not trying to fight or resist the thoughts, allowing the emotions to be released, allowing the thoughts to be released. And maybe in the earlier stages, it was challenging to not identify with those thoughts. Those thoughts seem to persist in mind. That's okay. Just like, for example, if you do a meditation. For example, I do the Vipassana meditation. If you're interested in that, I'll link in the description to it. If thoughts appear in mind for the meditation practice, let them be. They appear, disappear, appear, disappear. So in day-to-day life, what happens is if thoughts of limitation appear in mind, they appear and disappear as you no longer identify with them. And as there is an intimate relationship between thought and emotion, if you don't identify with the thought of limitation, then emotions are not experienced in a way that, let's say, we can say fear-based, shame-based. You notice that emotions are regulated, they flow, and they're not experienced as stifling or strong, as there's an intimate relationship between thought and emotion. Now also, let's say if emotions arise, as the individual allows the emotions to be released, and as mentioned in the earlier stages, this might also be challenging, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you for experiencing emotions. If, let's say, the emotions are experienced in a painful way, acknowledge that there's nothing wrong with you. That is a healthy relationship with emotions. That is a healthy relationship with thoughts. Why I say that is, if a person, let's say, shames or condemns themselves or tries to hold on, forcefully suppress or repress emotions, what happens is then they may all of a sudden in mind have all these thoughts of limitation appear in mind. And then they may start fighting the thoughts, fighting the emotions. So there's an intimate relationship between thought and emotion. If strong emotions arise, allow them to be released. And you'll notice that there's less and less thoughts of limitation appearing in mind. You do nothing to shift your identity. You're actually, in that moment, embodying true identity, true self-acceptance into form, physically, emotionally, and mentally. Through the mental clarity, it is apparent. Now, same with thoughts. If thoughts of limitation, thoughts of suggestion, let's say, that you are not love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, that you do not have what you desire, that you are not all that you desire to be, thoughts of limitation in relation to a person, environment, circumstance, information, if those thoughts arise in mind, no longer identify with them. They appear to disappear. And let's say if the individual does identify with that thought, it may start to generate the experience of the energy in motion. Emotions are energy in motion to be experienced in a particular way, which then they may shame and condemn themselves for experiencing emotions that way, and then further identify with the thoughts of limitation, suggesting to themselves that they are not good enough, or they are not love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, which we know clearly is an illusion. In the moment, the opportunity is taken, we can say, if it presents itself. In entrepreneurship over the years, I had many opportunities. In sales presentations, in relation to the day-to-day activities, I had many opportunities to, as I also say, relax into the flow. Just as the individual can relax into the flow during meditation or while going for a walk, an individual may also relax into the flow in relation to what can appear as a challenge, which is an opportunity, or chaos, which is an opportunity. They can relax into the flow there by doing nothing, allowing themselves to be, we could say. By allowing yourself to be, everything appears to be perfectly as it is now. Practically speaking, you no longer think that there's something wrong with you. You no longer think that there's something wrong with the current experience. For example, I've been a consultant for many years in entrepreneurship. And prior to getting involved with consulting, business consulting, I built an IT business. What I've worked with many entrepreneurs to do is discover that within each moment are infinite opportunities. Infinite potential is here now in this moment. By appreciating the silence in the moment, by doing nothing, abiding as we are, clarity arises. Clarity always was there, is there, and ever shall be there now, beyond the thoughts that arise from those beliefs, let's say, that suggest we have to do it this way, otherwise it won't work. Or we have to do it that way, otherwise it won't work. In the moment, we do nothing to shift the identity. In the moment, we do nothing. Practically, we do nothing in the moment to shift the identity. And then all of a sudden, clear thinking arises, intuitive ideas. They may start to, all of a sudden, appear, we could say, to have a solution for whatever it is that they're dealing with. Maybe, for example, they didn't know what kind of marketing strategies to put into place, yet they've been consuming a lot of different marketing information. They have a lot of reference experience. They've been involved with business for a while. Clarity may arise in that moment to optimize some of the things they're doing, or optimize it in a way that they've never done before. Or they may pull from an idea that, let's say, has never been done before, yet they apply it and it works perfectly. Or, what I've also seen, as mentioned, they may have been consuming a lot of information. Now all of a sudden, some information they had consumed a while back ends up being the thing to do to apply. All by being as they are. By doing nothing, they have shifted their identity. And true identity is beyond limitation. You are beyond limitation. That suggests you are not love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. That people around you are not love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. That you are not in harmony with them. That they are not in harmony with you. That reality is not perfect as it is now. That reality appears not to be in harmony with you. Those are thoughts of limitation. By doing nothing, we shift our identity. And again, more accurately put, you become as you are, true identity, beyond limitation. And also, as mentioned, clarity arises as you are infinitely intelligent as well. So existence, love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. Existence, completion. Existence, infinite intelligence. You access infinite intelligence in the silence while doing nothing. This is why many sages have mentioned silence being the greatest teacher. What does that mean, silence being the greatest teacher? I trust you've noticed it. The still small voice arises as we do nothing. Visions flash upon the mind's eye. Creative ideas flash upon the mind's eye. Intuition, spontaneously even. A person automatically does something and it produces results. All arising from the silence by doing nothing and thus shifting identity. So as we continue to practice this, you continue to acknowledge that you transcend the limiting thoughts. It's very clear. You know you are not those thoughts of limitation. And as you continue to prove it in equation, as you do nothing to shift the identity from false identity construct to true identity, as you are now, you are already the true identity. A person in mind may think that they are not. They may think that they are the beliefs of limitation, the thoughts of limitation. And as mentioned, what I did over the years is acknowledge, wait, these thoughts appearing in mind are clearly not me, as they seem to point to lack of fulfillment, lack of love, lack of happiness, lack of peace, lack of bliss, lack of fulfillment, lack of being infinitely intelligent as I am. And as I no longer identified with those thoughts, sure enough, it manifested into form as entrepreneurial successes, harmonious relationships, being calm, we could say, being as I am, allowing myself to be, allowing people to be. That is one of the, let's say, most harmonious things, in personal opinion, of applying what we're talking about here, is the harmonious relationship with people. Prior to that, I used to think, and that's not me really thinking, that's old man thinking. Old man thinking was thinking, let's say, that people appeared to be in conflict with me, in disharmony with me, and that theater would play out as reality was experienced through the lens of that belief of limitation, the belief of separation in that regard. Then, as those thoughts of limitations appeared in mind to disappear, and disappeared, we can say, taking the opportunity to do nothing, to shift identity. What appeared is true identity, true harmony, as in conversational flow. In consulting, for example, we come up with creative solutions together. I may say it, they may say it, we may say it together. That has happened a number of times. We say the same thing at the same time. Synchronicity. Now, it may happen this way or that way. I don't consider one way better than another, because who suggests that one way is better than another? Maybe that, and it is, that particular thought of one way being better than another arises in mind from a dichotomous belief that suggests one way is better than another. That's why I created that video on the 7-day mental and emotional diet. Although I don't consider it a diet, I see this as the true way of life. It was inspired by the 7-day mental diet by Emmett Fox, yet with respect, I considered and incorporated both thought and emotion. So through releasing the emotion, those thoughts of limitation no longer appear in mind. By no longer identifying with the thoughts of limitation in mind, emotions are regulated. Is doing one way better than another? Who suggests that? Again, not you really thinking. That thought appears from a dichotomous belief in mind suggesting this way is better than that way. You may do this, you may do that. It all gets to the same point, which is that you exist now perfectly as you are now, as love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. You already are all that you desire to be. You have all that you desire. You have found the kingdom, and all these things of love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment as symbols are automatically, naturally added onto you. So in relation to my journey, I started this off with autosuggestions, which are acknowledgments of being all that I desire to be, having all that I desire, acknowledging that I am love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, in whatever shape or form. And then along the journey, I also released identification to particular thoughts of limitations that would appear in mind for whatever the reason may be. They spawn from the beliefs that autosuggestions were releasing identification to particular beliefs, as by acknowledging that I am love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment through autosuggestion, it was also purifying the subconscious mind from beliefs of limitation. What also happened was, let's say, other beliefs of limitation that were in mind, thoughts would arise from those particular beliefs, and then I would take the opportunities for mind purification. So is one way better than another? For me, it has always been a combination. Yet over the course, what happened naturally and organically is I started to more so doing what we're talking about here today. Doing nothing to shift my identity. Doing nothing. I just kept accepting myself, you could say. This is radical self-acceptance. The radical self that transcends limitations. You accept yourself the way you are, more and more so with increasing frequency on a continuous basis. You continue to accept yourself. If opportunities present themselves, before, let's say I wasn't as excited about it, but now I got excited about it. Eventually I got excited about it because anytime those thoughts appeared in mind that suggest limitation, separation from being love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, I became excited. How so? Because, and why so, we could say. Every time I did not identify with those thoughts, I no longer identified with the false identity construct. I remained as I am, perfectly as I am. I took those opportunities to do nothing. See, I could have identified with the false identity construct of limitation, or in that moment, I accept myself. So that's how we practically do nothing to shift our identity. To shift our identity, again, specifically, what I mean, very precisely, is true identity, the way you are now, perfectly as you are now. Whatever way, you could shift your identity doing whatever you like. There are many different modalities. I've worked with many people over the years, and I've done many partnerships, and I've had many conversations that have many different ways they have been applying to shift their identity, whatever it is that they do, don't do, etc. Again, I would release personally that belief of one way being better than another to allow your natural way to arise. And then you get to a point inevitably, or maybe you start off at the point, could be that way as well, where you do nothing to shift your identity as you acknowledge true identity beyond limitation, beyond thoughts of separation from being, love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, in relation to yourself, in relation to other people, in relation to environment, circumstance, and information. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further acknowledge. You could say, I acknowledge myself to be beyond limitation, true identity as unconditional love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. I experience this embodied, mentally, emotionally, physically, as I remain as I am, beyond limitation, beyond the conditions, as conditions appear to disappear, to reveal the physical expression of true being, pure consciousness, as I am, perfectly as I am, complete love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment now.